A shocking new poll from The Hollywood Reporter shows that 57% of Americans are concerned that what they hear on network news is not accurate. According to health officials, this means the other 43% of Americans no longer have the rudimentary intelligence required to perform such tasks as peeling an orange, asking a policeman to take them home, or driving a muscle car into a flaming pile of garbage at 170 miles an hour because their best friend told them it would be cool. In other worrisome data, the poll revealed that nearly 53% of Americans find CNN a credible news source, which means over half of Americans are now suffering from a strange mental illness, which causes them to hear voices in their heads delivering credible news while they're listening to the people lying on CNN. Several afflicted people were concerned that the voices in their heads were telling them to do terrible things, like say you love Satan or vote Democrat. But fortunately, those voices were in fact coming from CNN, and the hallucinated voices were far more benign. The poll further found that more than 20% of Americans find the news networks are not credible news sources, causing health officials to become concerned that nearly 80% of Americans are gormless idiots. In a follow-up interview with an American who found the networks credible, 30-year-old Brooklynite Wimpy Artisanal told pollsters, quote, "I know when I'm watching ABC, I am getting the whole truth, and that Dr. Meredith Grey really is concerned about Andrew being alone in the operating room with Richard after Richard walked in on Andrew and Meredith making out," unquote. When told that that was the plot of Grey's Anatomy, Mr. Artisanal said, quote, "I believe every word of it, and the news as well," unquote. In the wake of the poll findings, doctors at the CDC are working overtime to develop a cure for gullibility, which could, if effective, eradicate network news completely. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped, ipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, this is my last day here at Hillsdale as the Pulliam Distinguished Fellow in Journalism. I've become more and more distinguished as the week has gone on until I'm just so distinguished I can't even distinguish how distinguished I am. Last night I delivered my public address at a tremendously pleasant dinner and event. The whole thing has been really just a wonderful experience. I'm going to have to think about it because it's such a nice place to be that I am a little bit torn about coming back to Los Angeles. So why anyone would be torn about coming back to Los Angeles. Anyway, I think the speech will be available online somewhere. We'll figure it out and we'll put it out there for you. One of the things I was talking about the fact that human beings have an inborn moral sense and that you can tell when they're inventing an ideology which is meant to circumvent that moral sense, when they're making excuses for stealing your money or seizing power or killing people. And I listed some symptoms of a guilty conscience that plagues wrongdoers. One symptom was silencing dissent, because if you're lying about something, the truth can be very powerful, so you've got to shut it down. And another symptom of a twisted ideology is disaster mongering, by which I mean seeing disasters everywhere around every corner, because in a state of emergency, moral laws can sometimes be reasonably suspended, which is supposed to justify your stupid immoral lies that you're telling about the things that you're doing. Now, just like hypochondriacs can get sick, catastrophes do happen even on Chicken Little's watch. So let's take a look at white nationalism. The Democrats say it's on the rise, and the internet is to blame, and also, of course, that evil Donald Trump. Hate crimes are getting worse, they say. Here's what I say. The overblown hysteria about white nationalism is disaster mongering meant to disguise a move towards censorship of mainstream conservative speech. The left can hold up pictures of Nazis and bigots and killers, but their real targets are the ideas expressed by people like you and me. And I'll show you what I mean. But first, we have to talk about ring of security, which is what you want around your home. I told you the story about Jonathan Hay, who has some job. Nobody really knows what he does, but he walks around with an air of authority. So we all respect him because who knows, maybe he can fire us. But I told you about how somebody came to his house 2:30 in the morning. Luckily, he had a Ring doorbell, which let him talk to the guy and see the guy and the girl who was out there as they tried to talk their way into his house. The minute he left the next day, he spent some money and he just surrounded his house with Ring devices because Ring is dedicated to making neighborhoods safer. You know about their smart video doorbells. They also have the floodlight cam, which will set off automatic floodlights when anybody walks onto your property. Ring helps you stay connected to your home anywhere in the world. You can talk to anybody who comes to the door right there on your phone. And as a listener, you have a special offer on a Ring starter kit available right now. With a video doorbell and motion-activated floodlight cam, the starter kit has everything you need to start building a ring of security around your home. Just go to ring.com/Klavan. That's ring.com/Klavan. Anyone comes to your home, just press the talk button and say, how do you spell Klavan? If they don't know, not let them in. They're probably all right. But if they do know, it's Klavan. It's Mailbag Day.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to just scream, and then you're going to have to play It's Mailbag Day. It is Mailbag Day. We'll answer all your questions.
Yeah.
Stop. I can't stand it anymore. Answers guaranteed 100% correct. Will change your life. Some of you for the better. The rest of you are doomed. And tomorrow I'm off. I'm flying home. And so the next show will be on Friday. And then the Cleveland this weekend will come back. And those of you who survive being doomed from the mailbag will, in fact, be doomed. So white nationalism is bad, okay? The left and I agree. We agree that white nationalism is bad. We have different reasons. They think it's bad because they want to take the injustice they feel has been done against people of color and turn it around on white people. They feel that they're always doing the same thing. They're always saying, oh, there's an injustice. We have to end the injustice. But what they're really trying to do is seize the power to commit injustice as some kind of corrective for the injustice of the past. I think white nationalism is bad because it's stupid and wrong to make moral judgments about people according to their race rather than their actions, okay? Stupid to make moral judgments about people according to their race instead of their actions. Let's call that Rule 1. Do not make moral judgments about people according to their race instead of their actions. Rule 1. You do not violate Rule 1 because you don't want it done to you, right? The golden rule. Everybody knows he's an individual responsible for himself. He's not responsible to everybody who's the same color he is or that comes from the same country he is. You can't say, oh, white people held slaves and therefore you're responsible because you have the same color as those white people. And it wasn't white people holding slaves. It was some white people holding slaves while other white people, of course, were fighting to free them. You can't say black people commit crimes. Black people are muggers. Because it's some black people. It's not the guy you're talking to at that moment. He feels himself as an individual. You want to feel yourself as an individual. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Breaking Rule 1 is wrong. The only time race actually matters is when looking at somebody according to his race exposes someone violating Rule 1. Okay, so if Jews aren't getting any jobs at a certain bank because they're not hiring Jews, that they are violating Rule 1, and that's a clue that the fact that they're not hiring Jews, you can see that that's going on. But other than that, you're just adopting. You are violating Rule 1 if you start to disrespect people according to their race because they're black, whatever else it is. That's why I'm against affirmative action, right? I don't think it's right to penalize Asian people or white people according to their race by giving credits to other people because of their race. I just think that's violating Rule 1. I'm against reparations because the person who's paying the reparations didn't do anything, and the person who is getting the reparations didn't suffer anything. I'm against Indian reservations. How about that one? I think they should be phased out. Why should they not just be full Americans at this point? It's just miserable on those reservations. It's bad for them. Why should they be? Why should we try to get rid of the sins of the past? And there were sins of the past, but you cannot fix the past. It just can't be done. And I'm against white nationalism for the same reason. My philosophy has benefit over the left's philosophy in that it makes sense. I'm against anything that violates Rule 1. But in their attempt to win power over the economy and speech, Democrats need disasters. That's what I was talking about before. If they can tell you that a disaster is coming, maybe you'll suspend the moral rules. Maybe you'll suspend Rule 1. You don't know. So they've got Russian collusion and evil Trump, and now it's white nationalism. House Democrats are sponsoring this completely ridiculous non-binding resolution condemning white supremacist rhetoric and violence that specifically targets immigrants. So this is a hit at your old pal, the president of the United States, because he's trying to secure the border. So that must make him a bigot. You know, it's complete nonsense, but this is what they're doing. So they came out and they give a press conference and they're talking about, they don't mention Trump by name, but they sort of refer to his characterization of the border situation. Oh, it's an invasion. And he used the word animals to describe those nice fellows who belong to MS-13. I almost said MSNBC, a Freudian slip, but it's MS-13. Even the people at MSNBC are not animals like the people at MS-13. So I think we can let them off the hook for that. Here is a clip, just to give the whole game away, from Brooke Baldwin at CNN, interviewing Jonathan Greenblatt of the left-wing Anti-Defamation League, which used to be a respectable organization fighting against anti-Semitism, and now is just another one of these organizations that's been taken over by the left.
Law enforcement, policymakers, and even some politicians haven't taken the threat of white nationalism sufficiently seriously.
So when the president says, no, it's just a small number of people.
Well, he's wrong on the facts.
Why is this happening? Why is it on the rise? And what are people doing about it?
I think there are multiple reasons why it's on the rise. Look, it's always been there. But first and foremost, in our charged political environment,
It's exacerbated?
It's all exacerbated. The divisions, the tensions, the anxiety, that's all there. Secondly, social media has created a sort of a connective tissue.
Easy way to spread the hate.
Previously it didn't happen. But one of the reasons why we had European white supremacists in Charlottesville and then foreign white supremacists who lauded what happened in Pittsburgh is because through not just Facebook and Twitter, but Gab and Discord and Fortune H and all these other platforms, they're all literally exalting. And the third reason they're doing so is because they find their language and their memes literally on the tip of the tongue of our president.
Ah, yes. Okay, so there it is. The whole plot laid out right there, right? The problem is the evil white supremacist is on the rise, and there's a little, if you weren't watching, there's a little chart in back showing it spiked 17% or whatever, which really refers to hate crimes, most of which are against Jews. And then it's the social media. That's the problem. Here's the New York Times, a former newspaper, ran this piece. I mean, this is, it's a talking point when they're spreading it around. Each venue is picking it up, right? So attacks by white supremacists are growing. So are their connections, right? It's social media. It just says in a manifesto, this is the lead in a manifesto posted online before his attack, the gunman who killed 50 last month in a rampage at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. Have you noticed that the killing of Muslims is a horrible killing? It's an atrocity. But you have noticed that this has gotten more press in the New York Times than a Muslim killing 50 people would ever get. I mean, immediately they'd be putting out stories about how we have to protect Muslims from the backlash, but a guy kills Muslims and we hear endlessly about his white supremacy. Anyway, he said this killer, this knucklehead who did the killing, said he drew inspiration from white extremist terrorism attacks in Norway, the United States, Italy, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. His references to those attacks placed him in an informal global network of white extremists whose violent attacks are occurring with greater frequency in the West. An analysis by the New York Times of recent terrorism attacks found that at least a third of white extremist killers since 2011 were inspired by others who perpetrated similar attacks. The connections between the killers span continents and highlight how the internet and social media have facilitated the spread of white extremist ideology and violence. So be afraid of social media, be afraid of the right. It's anybody who's talking on the right who's inspiring these people. And the president, who does Twitter more than the president, we just heard from CNN, no less a source than CNN, that 53% of Americans find credible, which is the most depressing statistic I've heard in weeks. On CNN, they told us it's Donald Trump is the problem, social media is the problem. What do you think the idea is? Obviously, this is a world in which Ben Shapiro can be called a member of the alt-right. Ben Shapiro, who has been attacked by the alt-right more than any other person, can be called a member of the alt-right. Candace Owens, whom we love, Candace Owens was called on Mediaite a sometime Hitler apologist, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. So they hold a hearing on white nationalism, right? And a funny thing happened. The Republicans trolled the Democrats, who obviously run the House and they run the committee. They trolled the Democrats by inviting Candace to speak. All right. So CNN runs a story about this, and the caption doesn't even mention what happened. Okay. It does not mention what happened. Is Representative Lou, this is California, Ted Lieu from California, shows a video at hate crimes hearing of Candace Owens discussing Hitler as if she were the target of the investigation. Now, let's remember what Candace said about Hitler, because as we all know, whenever a right-winger mentions Hitler, we saw this happen to Ben at the March for Life, immediately there's an uproar, no matter what he said. What Ben said was he wouldn't kill baby Hitler because he's not Hitler yet. He would take baby Hitler away from his family. And I was so thrilled that there was a baby that Ben wouldn't kill that I thought that was a lovely thing to say. But in fact, they made a big fuss about it completely over nothing. What happened in this meeting was Candace was asked by a member of the audience about nationalism in Western politics. And Owens brought up our old friend Adolf, which is always a mistake, by the way, because you're always going to step in it. And she said, I don't have any problems with the word nationalism. I think that the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. Whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. He was a national socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. Her point obviously being that Hitler was a globalist, not, in fact, a nationalist. She wasn't, look, pardon me, whatever you say about Candace, let's not call her suicidal. Hitler wasn't exactly a friend to the black man, right? It's not like she's saying, oh, what a wonderful idea Hitler had because he's a white, you're going to call Candace a white supremacist? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So she comes to this hearing and Ted Lieu dishonestly pulls a little clip of this and makes it sound like she's praising Hitler. And Candace just ripped him apart. And watch Jerry Nadler try to shut her down. I mean, she's already given this speech about how the Democrats were the Klan. The Democrats are the people who have kept black people down all these years. And so they're after her. They're after blood. Listen to this exchange.
I think it's pretty apparent that Mr. Lieu believes that black people are stupid and will not pursue the full clip in its entirety. He purposely presented an extracted clip.
The witness will suspend for a moment. It is not proper to refer disparagingly or to a member of the committee. The witness will not do that again. Witness may continue.
Sure, even though I was called despicable.
Witness may not refer to a member of the committee as stupid.
I didn't refer to him as stupid. That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. You didn't listen to what I said. May I continue?
Please.
As I said, he is assuming that black people will not go pursue the full 2-hour clip. And he purposefully he cut off, and you didn't hear the question that was asked of me. He's trying to present as if I was launching a defense of Hitler in Germany, when in fact, the question that was asked of me was pertaining to whether or not I believed that whether or not I believed in nationalism.
So if this were the other way around, if these were Republicans picking on a black woman who was a Democrat, that we would be hearing about how a couple of men misrepresented this woman and then tried to bully her into silence. You could see right there that she did not call Lieu stupid. She said that Lieu must think black people are stupid. Then Nadler said, oh, you can't call Lieu stupid. I mean, that is dishonest, and it's bullying, and it's an attempt to silence a black woman, but you'll never hear about that on the air. And here's what they were trying to silence. That clip that you just heard, that's been going around the internet. It's got like 1 million hits, but that's not what she was there to say. What she was there to say was this, and this is the truth. It's like Candace, the other Candace.
There's a single adult today that in good conscience would make the argument that America is a more racist or a more white nationalist society than it was when my grandfather was growing up. And yet we're hearing these terms sent around today because what they want to say is that brown people need to be scared, which seems to be the narrative that we hear every 4 years right ahead of a presidential election. Here are some things we never hear. 75% of the black boys in California don't meet state reading standards. In inner cities like Baltimore, within 5 high schools and 1 middle school, not a single student was found to be proficient in math or reading in 2016. The single motherhood rate in the black community, which was at 23% in the 1960s when my grandfather was coming up, is at a staggering 74% today. I am guessing there will be no committee hearings about that. There are more black babies aborted than born alive in cities like New York, and you have Democrat Governor Andrew Cuomo lighting up buildings to celebrate late-term abortions. I could go on and on. My point is that white nationalism did not do any of those things that I just brought up. Democrat policies did.
Good for you, Candace. Great stuff. That is great stuff. All true. You know it was true because the Washington Post said she turned a serious inquiry into a farce. What she did was she exposed a farce as a farce. That was really one of her finest moments. It was absolutely terrific. White nationalism has been at a steady state for 30 years. It has been at a steady state for 30 years. It is a sucky anti-Western ideology. White nationalists and leftists agree that the West is defined by whiteness. It's conservatives who know it is defined by its ideas about liberty, its ideas about the dignity of the individual, its ideas about a God who cares about us and forgives us. That's what Western civilization is defined by. Both white nationalists and leftists agree that it's defined by its whiteness. They both think the same things because they both violate Rule 1. That is what's happening. But here's a piece from the Wall Street Journal, excellent piece from Joe Craven McGinty. Are far-right extremist crimes rising? No. There has been a steady rate. She is quoting here from Michael Jensen, a senior researcher at START, the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism at the University of Maryland. He says there's been a steady rate of far-right extreme crime since at least 1970. So pardon me, I misspoke. That's 50 years when we started collecting data. What has changed is the emphasis on reporting far-right extremism. It produces the perception that there is a new increase. It's not true. Seth Barron, writing in City Journal, talks about the fact that almost all of the world's extremist violence, is concentrated in a handful of regions where very few white people live. It's almost all Islamist violence, almost all of it. Almost all of it is Islamist violence. That's the threat to the world. However, as Seth Barron continues in City Journal, in areas where whites do live, America, Canada, Europe, and Australia, and New Zealand, white nationalists indeed perpetrate a significant proportion of the relatively uncommon acts of extremist violence. Remember Obama talking about how we shouldn't worry about Islamist violence because you had a bigger chance of slipping and hurting yourself in the bathtub? Remember when Obama said that? And Steven Pinker says that in his book Enlightenment Now. He says, oh, they're just trying to make you afraid, but the numbers don't rate it. You have a better chance of being hit by whatever, lightning, than being killed by a terrorist. But you know, in a country that is majority white, there are going to be a lot of white people who are terrorists. But the thing is, the New York Times and these other people, they have a very, very strange way of counting what is a white nationalist crime or even an extremist crime. They list the ADL, the guy before the Anti-Defamation League. They list things like a Klan member who was killed by his wife, who was also a Klan member, and they call that an extremist crime. I mean, these are very much statistics that are being messed with. And what is the point? The point is social media is dangerous. Right-wingers are dangerous. If Andrew Klavan or Michael Knowles or Ben Shapiro goes on Twitter and starts saying, gee, you know, the individual freedom should be protected, he can be shut down for anything because he's inspiring some clown somewhere with a rifle who's going to kill innocent Muslim people. That is the narrative they're building. It's untrue. They are lying. The incident of white nationalism isn't going up. It's a disgusting idea. It's a stupid anti-Western, anti-Christian idea. It is a steady state. It is a danger. There's no question about it, but it is a very tiny danger, just like Obama said about Islamism, which is a much larger danger around the world. They are talking about this because they want the right to shut right-wingers down on social media. That's all it is. It's crisis mongering, which is a sign of guilt, and trying to stifle dissent, which is a sign of, guess what? Guilt. They are guilty because they're wrong, and they know they're wrong. Another crisis, by the way, just on another subject, really, is this Mueller report. You know, the Attorney General Barr is in front of Congress, and he's testifying. He went there to testify about the Department of Justice's budget. And of course, they blindsided him with a bunch of questions about the Mueller report. And the crisis and all this stuff. What's really interesting about this is the rules that are hampering Mueller from releasing the report, which he says he will do within a week. He says he will do it within a week, but the rules that are keeping him from doing it are rules that were put in place when the Democrats became hysterical because the Starr report about Bill Clinton abusing women and lying about it, the Starr report came out and it was released to the public, and they were upset about that, so they put rules in place to prevent that from happening so quickly. Barr is following those rules, and the leftist media is saying, well, the Starr report was released. Yes, and after the Starr report was released, they made new rules that are hampering Barr. However, there was one piece of news. There was one piece of news in these Barr in these Barr hearings that was kind of overlooked in all the news about when he was going to release the report, and that is that he says that he is investigating the Department of Justice, not just the Inspector General, who is already investigating how the investigation into Trump started. Barr says the Department of Justice, is going to investigate it too. And when he was asked why this morning in today's hearings, this is what he said. This is cut 13.
One of the things I want to do is pull together all the information from the various investigations that have gone on, including on the Hill and in the department, and see if there are any remaining questions to be addressed.
And can you share with us why you feel a need to do that?
Well, for the same reason we're worried about foreign influence in elections. We want to make sure that during an election, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal. Generation I grew up in, which was the Vietnam War period, people were all concerned about spying on anti-war people and so forth by the government. And there were a lot of rules put in place to make sure that there's an adequate basis before our law enforcement agencies get involved in political surveillance. I'm not suggesting that those rules were violated, but I think it's important to look at that. And I'm not talking about the FBI necessarily, but intelligence agencies more broadly.
So Barr may investigate how this Russian hoax got started. If the Democrats are looking for a catastrophe, that could be it. That could be it for them. All right, we got the mailbag coming up. I got to say goodbye to. Stop, please. I can't. This is like one of those Chinese tortures where they drip things on you. Anyway, we got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. Come over to dailywire.com and subscribe. It's a lousy $10 a month, a lousy $100 for the full year. You get the Leftist Tears tumbler, and you get to ask questions in the mailbag, and I will solve all your problems for $100 a year. That's a good deal. Come over to dailywire.com.